My name is Karen Neurohr. I'm a librarian for Oklahoma State University. Today is Saturday, October 21st, 2006. I'm at the Phillips Conoco Alumni Center with Peggy Shafer, who graduated from OSU in 1956, and Carl Shafer, who graduated from OSU in 1955. And they are here to share their stories about their time as students at Oklahoma State University for the library project, O State Stories, an oral history project of the OSU Library. Since it's homecoming this weekend, let's start there. And what were homecoming events like when you were students here?
Much less than they are now. I can remember seeing a parade. I don't remember all the house decorations and walking around. You lived over in Stout, so you tell me what it was like.
Well, we had a simple house decoration in Stout. I remember it was something about Charlie Brown. It was just a cutout. I did participate in one homecoming parade when I was the homecoming queen, and it was very simple. It was, we were in a car and there were a few floats, but it was nice, but it was just not as big as it is now.
Wasn't it as elaborate?
No, not as elaborate. That's the word.
Okay. All right, we were just talking about homecoming and what it was like when you were students here. And Carl, I think you mentioned something about Peggy and a special homecoming activity.
Yeah, she was the Old Club Queen, which means she was the homecoming queen in 1955. She was still going with football players before I managed to enter the seat, so I remember that, yes. And saw that parade.
Did you see that parade?
Yeah, sure.
I didn't see you.
But you're talking to people who, this is 50 years ago, and you're asking us what things were like, and it kind of fades a little bit, so for me.
So when you were homecoming queen, what did that involve for you?
Well, it involved, like I say, riding in an open-air convertible in the parade, and then at the halftime, the president of the Oak Club, who was Ned Blass, we decided this morning, the wrestler, crowned me, and that was about it, I was there for the big deal.
How were you selected to be homecoming queen?
The living quarters, like Stout Hall was where I was living at the time, and they nominated us, and then we appeared before the Oak Club, the group of us, and they chose who we would be.
So just stories and stuff.
Oh, it was the whole campus. Must have been about 25 or 30 of us.
Did the campus residential life do anything special for homecoming? What was that like living in a dormitory and what you did for homecoming?
I lived under North Stadium. I didn't live in Bennett Hall. We ate over there, but I didn't live there. It was about 7 basketball players under the North Stadium. So we didn't do anything.
You didn't decorate?
We didn't decorate the North Stadium, no. We ran the laundry. But it didn't do anything, as I recall. It was much more subdued situation than now, at least for us.
Well, I said earlier that Stout Hall had a house decoration, but it was rather simple. It was about Charlie Brown, Peanuts, that had just become popular, and Charlie Schultz. And so I remember we did have a clever house decoration, but it didn't take a lot of time to make it. It was fairly simple.
We saw the AGR last year. We were blown away by what they do and what they do. It's just amazing. Does anybody go to school in the fall? Just decorate houses.
They're required. The freshmen are required to go to class, and they actually have study time every week that they're required to do in the Greek system. Mr. Shafer, you were in sports here.
Yeah, basketball. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And who was your coach?
Henry P. Iba, Mr. Iba, I should say. And I came over here when I was just out of high school. Probably would have gone to Northwestern State University in Alabama, but I came over here with some guys. We tried out. There were probably 100 of us in Gallagher Hall for 2 days. Tried out. I just came over on a chance of the draw, and 5 of us he picked. And I remember talking to him at the end of the last day, and he said that he had this tremendous diamond ring. I remember that. And he said, "Boy, you come here and I'll give you a job." And he never mentioned scholarship. He never said that. He said, "I'll give you a job," which it was, because we worked 15 hours a week, off season. Cleaned the stadium, ran the laundry, aerated the football field, and then got $15 a month from Whitehurst Hall. That was big money, because the Legion was only 45, 50 cents to go to the movie when there was a Legion. So,
And you got free room and board and
oh,
books.
free room, board, books, tuition, everything. Free ride, yeah. You just had to work out 4 hours a day during Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. But it was good. It was a good thing. Good thing.
And what activities were you involved in, Peggy?
Well, I lived in Stout Hall and I chose not to pledge a sorority. I had a lot of good friends in a lot of different sororities, so I stayed an independent. And I first became involved in the Baptist Student Union before I came to Oklahoma A&M. And so that was really my group, was the BSU. And I ran for freshman secretary and won. And then I ran for, was that freshman secretary? The best I see is Peggy
I thought
Keys.
it was, because that's the first time I saw
And
you.
so I sort of got involved in politics at that point and kept on. I was home economics student senator and orange and black quill, I'm trying to think. Then I was mortar board, tap for mortar board. Oh, I was president of the Association of Women Students, which was a really interesting and stretchy experience.
You headed up REW,
Religious Emphasis Week,
which
I
was
was
a big deal
co-chairman
then. It really was.
with that. I was social director for BSU, which was huge then. Like every Saturday night, you had a huge party with all kinds of things going on. But it was busy and fun.
You mentioned you were president of the Women's University Students.
Yes,
Well, I'm not familiar with that organization. I haven't heard anyone else talk about that today. I'd like to know a little more about that.
Well, it was probably at a time when women's activities and men's activities were separated. It'd be similar to Blue Key with the men. We had Association of Women Students were involved with Panhellenic, with independent women activities. I worked closely with Dean Patchen, who was the Dean of Women at that time. And it was an organization that, in fact, was an outreach to the women's groups on campus, sort of a coordinating group.
Well, I'd like to know how you two met.
Well, I saw this girl's picture in the, well, it's better at the BSU. I also saw a picture she was writing in Bennett Hall with her propaganda. And at that time, she was not a football player, as I recall, yes. And, but we did meet at the BSU. I called her and you can tell the rest of that story.
Oh, that's a good story, I think. I did meet Carl at the BSU, and at that time, the BSU was over here on Knobloch, a little old
Yeah.
house, and it had
Yeah. Where University Baptist Church is.
it had ping pong tables upstairs. And I'd just come on campus from this little town, Hera, Oklahoma, and walked up the stairs to see these two tall guys playing ping pong. And they stopped and introduced themselves to me and the other girl that was with me. And I said, hello, hello. And then later on that evening, this guy called me on the phone and said, would you like to walk to church with me on Sunday? And I said, well, that would be good. He said, this is Carl Shafer. And so when I went down to see him, when he came by to pick me up, I wasn't sure whether he was CJ, who I had met, CJ Hickson, or Carl Shafer. So that was,
Made a real good impression.
anyway, we were really good friends for several years before we fell in love, which was really nice.
And where were you married?
The city, First Baptist Church Chapel, what's the name of that chapel?
Louis Richard Chapel.
Kermit Whitaker, who was the Baptist student minister, married us in 1956 when she graduated. June 24th.
What campus traditions were pretty visible, really stood out when you were a student here?
Well, I remember we only could go to half the basketball games. And I remember OAMC and Ride Cowboys. I remember the wrestling team was big and had great tradition around basketball and wrestling. Traditions.
The Howdy Walk There was a howdy walk right through Theta Pond, and you were always supposed to say howdy when you walked down that walk. I remember that. Other than that, see, I don't think we had to wear beanies. I was asking somebody today. I don't think we
I didn't
there
wear
was no initiation stuff going on, as I recall. I don't recall a lot of traditions other than the songs. I couldn't tell you know, we had necessarily.
Okay, the Howdy Walk, was that referring to a particular section of the sidewalk, or
Yeah,
was
no,
it a
right through-
particular time that
Right through
occurred?
the Theta Pond area.
Mhm.
That was the howdy walk.
Anytime we were on campus,
You're
and many
supposed to
people
say
there.
howdy, at least say it when you were on that walk.
Oh, okay.
I think that's faded.
Oh,
But it was a good thing.
Yeah.
so, was it a friendly campus overall?
Oh, yeah,
yes.
very friendly.
Yes.
There's about 9,000 people. I know when we went to Texas A&M at 62, there were more people here than there were at Texas A&M. That's about 7,500 down there. Yeah, this was a friendly place. A lot of country kids came to Stillwater. There were no tests to get in. I remember that. No essay, no GRE, no nothing. You just came and got in. If you passed high school, I guess you were admitted. For which I'm thankful that there were no extreme.
Why don't you tell them what you told me Mr. Iva said about that school down south?
Oh, about OU? I remember him saying something to the extent we were just better people than they were. I don't think he'd want to be quoted on that, but
I don't know, he probably did that to motivate
he
you.
just felt that, yes. He just took things very seriously. And that was his way of getting a team. He didn't necessarily look for the best talent. He looked for the hardest working guys he could find. He could take a bunch of farm guys and so on. Not that Carl was a farm guy. And make a good team out of it. His idea was teamwork, defense. Defense was the whole thing. You could play offense. Maybe you'd be hot, maybe you wouldn't, but you could always play defense. That was his theory. And that's what you had to do. That's what you were supposed to do.
What were some of the places that the students hung out at, congregated at, gathering places on campus?
On campus.
Well, not
And off campus too.
BSU was our big thing once we got started. I got roped into that by my roommates, Nixon and Chester. But the student union had just opened. The library opened in '53, which was my second year. Your first, I guess. Yeah. And not that I hung out in the library a lot, but
You did too, I'll tell you a story.
The student union was a big gathering place. A lot of people played cards in that. There were always some of my fraternity brothers who should have been in class playing cards over the student union. I didn't spend a lot of time there because between basketball and classes and the BSU, I didn't do much else.
We had a big howdy dance every year at the student center. It's hard for me to say student center because at Texas A&M, where we've been for 4 years, it's the Memorial Student, MSC. So at the student center, we had a big howdy dance.
Student union. It's a
Student union,
right?
isn't it? It's not student center. I want to tell you one of the things that I thought was funny. At BSU one night, Carl had a reputation for being a hard worker, like he said that Mr. Iva wanted him to be, and he studied hard. He
Very
really
low
did.
skill, but hard
He
work.
played hard and he studied, he played basketball hard. And one night Kermit Whitaker, our student director, said, Mr. Iva told me today he was really worried about the grade point of the basketball team. Shafer made a 3.8 this semester instead of a 4 point.
That was the best I ever had.
No, it wasn't. But anyway, that he was quoted that way. What else did we went to Thompson's Barbecue in Perry.
Perry, yeah. Leachman,
Leachman.
what were we talking about? Mr. Leachman.
Well, where we
Places
Hung out
where you
over
hung
the
out.
Leachman Theater was the only movie I knew about. Somebody said there was an Aggie theater down there somewhere, but I don't know where that was.
that may have been after us. There was a
It was a drive-in.
Drive-in.
Drive-in movie. There wasn't a lot of entertainment around.
most of us, at least females, didn't have cars on campus then. And Carl had a car, but I didn't ever have a car. So you stayed on campus, you know. And down the way there was a little hamburger joint that I can't remember, drive-in.
Yeah, down, what is this street?
Down Washington.
Washington Street, I believe. Yeah.
It's where we went to have Cokes and hamburgers, and of course there was no drinking. I mean, there was maybe some, but 3.2 beer, I think, was what we had in that time, so.
If you had enough money, you'd go to eat at the student eating hotel. That was a nice place to go. Opening over there. So. But we didn't eat out much. Mostly just stayed at the dorm, I think. There was a Dairy Queen right here someplace, or some kind of dairy.
Bet you knew about that.
Yeah, we did a lot of business there. There was a Louis Club 29 out here or something, but we never went out there. So.
That was.
was that Oklahoma City? It was a Louis Club in Stillwater. Is it still here? It was a dive, I think so.
Where did you guys go when school was out here and you went there for Thanksgiving dinner and the basketball team? It was
A townhouse. There is no townhouse now. Gene
restaurant.
Smeltzer, the assistant coach, owned this townhouse, and that's where we ate during Christmas and Thanksgiving, whenever the dorm wasn't open. It was a very nice restaurant for that day and age.
Did you get new uniforms, new shoes for basketball every year?
Oh yeah, we always got new shoes. I don't think the uniforms changed much. We had, let's see, black on the road, white at home. Yeah. Satin, there was satin kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we always got new shoes. But it was primitive compared to what athletes get today, let me tell you. When I look at the facilities that they have at A&M.
and the shorts were real short.
Yeah, short pants. And there was not, in Gallagher Hall, we were over today for the basketball bash. When I was playing, there was nothing, there was no advertisement, no painting, no nothing. Nothing was painted. They simply had lines on the floor. There may have been a small AM out in the jump circle, and there was a clock, an Elgin, E-L-G-I-N, Elgin clock up on the wall. That was it. Nothing else. No, you know, it was very stark. It was very stark
no
in
orange.
simplicity. No orange, no, not at all. It was bare, just bare. And most all stadiums were that way.
Who was your biggest rival in basketball?
Well, that's a good question. Either OU or KU. KU was always we weren't in their league conference, but they were always a big home and home rival. And in St. Louis, Mr. Alva had a big rival with Eddie Hickey at St. Louis, and we played them home and home. They were in the conference, but that conference stretched from Detroit to Houston. Picture that.
Okay, we were talking about basketball and rivals.
OU was, of course, always a rival, but that was given. But the real basketball ones we had more like was, and Tulsa too was, because his brother coached there. His brother was doing that. But KU, St. Louis, OU, and then we had, like I say, Houston and Detroit. We traveled by train mostly, and you'd have an overnight. And Bob Maddock, is Bob still around here? I think he is. He was 6'10" or 6'11". He got 2 berths, and the rest of us got 1 berth. And those were overnight trips. And the trains were nice, good food, service was great. That's how we got around.
Peggy, were the students able to follow the team and go to any of the out-of-town games ever?
I'm sure some did, like the pep clubs
Mm-hmm.
did, but I don't think I went out of town except for the All College, which was held in Oklahoma City during the Christmas vacation. I would go to some of those games, and a lot of students, I think, went to those. But as far as going to Wichita or KU,
Tulsa, there might have been some people went to those.
there may have been,
Probably OU.
but
So.
I didn't.
I remember we played at OU, they all got out, nobody played here. We got out, students got 10 cups, like 10 drinking cups, because of T-sips, and they banged those on the T-sips showed up. Now, we did play against, in the All College, you may have heard of Bill Russell, famous basketball player. I sat on the bench today because he was my junior or senior or sophomore year. We played against Bill Russell in the San Francisco team, I remember that. But I didn't get close to Chamberlain, that was a year afterward.
Did you have favorite class or favorite professor when you were a student here?
What favorite class?
What do you think about it? I'll tell.
Yeah.
Mr. White was one of my favorites. He wasn't a doctor, Professor White, and he taught humanities. And I loved that guy. He was wonderful. He made humanities live. And when I decided to change my major to home economics, because I thought I probably wasn't going to write the world's best-selling novel, and probably I was going to need to learn to teach, I went to him and I said, Professor White, I really need to change from arts and science. I've loved your classes. I love what I've learned here. And he said, that is so ridiculous to go learn something that your mother can teach you. You need to stay in arts and sciences. And he was really good. Also, Josephine Hoffer, when I went over to FRCD, and that's has become my profession is with early childhood and Head Start. She was a wonderful mentor. And I had Gertrude McAllister was a great teacher. Just had so many good teachers here.
I was in agricultural economics, and because I had come not off the farm but worked in agriculture, they needed to find a major for me. So they put me in agricultural economics. I just came to play basketball. And, but I got an economics course. Professor Trenton, Professor Leftwich. I remember Professor Trenton introduced me to the New York Times, which I thought was just wonderful, at the libraries to go and read on occasion. And Professor Leftwich, whose book wasn't out yet, I remember we would take off, one lecture would end with where he was on the board, and the next lecture would start at that same point, and he just wrote everything on the board. I think that's the only class I made a C in. We didn't have the book. We missed a lot of classes too that season, but I enjoyed those two guys. I had Blakely, Professor Blakely in agricultural economics, so I had some good ones. And I had a guy, what was he, in agronomy, who said actually every other word, actually. I remember that class. I remember what I learned in it, but I remember the class.
No, not to say actually when you
Don't say actually.
lectured.
Yes.
What did you do with you had a degree in agriculture economics, and so when you graduated, what did you?
Well, Peggy hadn't graduated yet, so I stayed here and got a master's degree in agricultural economics. Then I went to the Army in New Jersey. I was one of those, they were full of officers, so I'd come through ROTC, and I just was in for 6 months. You have to be in the Army, be in Fort Monmouth, because it's right south of New York City. We had a big time for that. Then I went to Penn State and got the PhD, and so that's why I was at Texas A&M for 37 years. I'm in the faculty of agricultural economics, so I stayed with it. Having started out, worked out okay. I still go to Guatemala once a year to teach down there in English, not Spanish.
Well, and you're back today, and who are the Cowboys playing today?
Let's see. We used to be the Aggies. They're playing the Aggies. Texas A&M, when they changed their name, it's a very traditional school. And they weren't going to change. They would let women in against their better judgment. They would volunteer the court. They weren't going to change their name from A&M, so they kept it. So they're still the Aggies. But we were Aggies when we were here. We were the Oklahoma Aggies.
And that's who we're playing today, is Texas A&M.
Texas A&M.
So are your loyalties a little bit divided since you're alumni here and you've been in College Station for so many years?
Well, having played here, I have to be for the Cowboys today. Otherwise, we're for the Aggies.
Mm-hmm.
If we're not playing OSU.
Mm-hmm. Do you try to come back for homecoming every year?
No, we've come back for the last 3 years, and we hadn't been here before. Isn't that awful? I mean, but we have the last.
Came back when Mr. Ivor retired.
That's right.
And then, other than that, we hadn't been back in 49 years, I guess. Don't ask me why.
Well, I think part of it was that we were working, and
Yeah.
you know, it's gotten
Children
easier.
and so on. But we really enjoy the homecoming. You guys knock yourselves out up here, I swear to goodness. That's why I asked if I went to school in the fall, because it looks like everybody's out working. Of course, the pledges do. I'm sure most of that heavy lifting. Yeah.
What can you tell me about a connection with a university and how that affects students over the course of their lives?
You go ahead.
Well, that's a good question. Of course, you got education there, so it's hard to devalue how much that's worth. And I love Oklahoma A&M, and I also have a Oklahoma State degree 2 years later. I mean, it was a great place, and who knows what you would have been without it. I have no way of making that judgment. And I've always felt a strong attachment. I haven't been, as you know, I haven't been back here that often, but we knew it was always here. So it's hard to put a weight on it, but it was very important. I think otherwise, I'd have stayed home with fixed radios or something. I got this chance.
For you, somebody who paid your way,
Well,
you know,
yeah.
you had a scholarship,
Free
and I know
ride.
you learned a lot from Mr. Abbott because you quote him all the time. And for me, it was the professors who took an interest. Professor White and Josephine Hoffer. Josephine, who is the one that recommended I do things beyond what I ever thought I could do, and believed in me, and just had wonderful hands-on experience at Oklahoma State. From the very first class in child development, we were working with children, and in home economics education. we went to Poto to observe. Then I did my student teaching at Pawnee, and I did all kinds of other experiences. So I think, and I went to that luncheon, was that just yesterday? At the human, what do they call that?
Human environmental
Sciences.
sciences.
And that's one of the things that all the people who were there who were being honored got up and said the practical things that they got to do while they were studying here made a big difference in their careers, and I agree with that.
Yeah, the professors, I remember now, like they come talk to me. I studied hard because I was afraid I was going to flunk out. I wasn't a genius in high school, so that's why I worked so hard. Most of it was how much I learned, how much I wrote it, but so that I did get good grades. And they came and told me, you should join this, you should join that, and so on, which I wouldn't have done that if they had taken an interest. So
And you should go to graduate school. They're the ones that said you should go to graduate school and get a PhD. So it was professors who really, as well as our parents, but
I wonder if they have time for that nowadays. I know they're awfully busy making grants, getting grants and stuff like that.
well, you did. I mean,
Yeah, but
what do you think it's like at Texas A&M now?
what has changed in time?
I know.
What was the mascot when you were here? The school mascot?
There was a Pistol Pete, but it was just like on stickers. There was no guy dressed up like Pistol Pete. Was it?
I thought there was.
I don't remember. I don't remember the big. If it was, it didn't have the big head as every. There was no horse.
That was
Sure of
Mr.
that.
Pete. No, there was no horse.
And, it wasn't. That wasn't probably what 5 cheerleaders
Yeah, about that many.
at most. So
I tried out for cheerleader and didn't make it.
you did.
Yes.
I
Did I
didn't know
never
that. I
tell you
didn't know that.
I don't share that.
Couldn't flip over backwards.
I couldn't flip all the backwards. Probably.
Nobody else did either.
Well, the name of the university changed right after you left here.
That's right.
Yeah.
And how did you feel about that? We've heard some people say that they were okay with it, that they thought that the reasons that they changed the name were good ones, and that they didn't mind that the university changed its name.
I think I was okay with it.
Yeah, I did. Mine was more. It was more. A&M's kind of provincial in the sense that you think it's just for agriculture and engineering, mechanical. But it didn't bother me. It's although the only thing is there's a lot of state universities, and so it's kind of a generic thing. But no, it didn't bother me.
I think it is more descriptive.
And you can use the state university.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
I think this is a great idea that,
Yeah.
that you're doing this, and thank you for taking time to be a part of this kind of gathering of history.
And the person who edits this has my sympathy. Make something out of this. So, you all are
Well,
brave to do it. I
if it weren't-
appreciate you taking your afternoon.
If it weren't for people like you, we wouldn't be able to do this. And so we truly appreciate that you took the time to come in and participate in this project very much.
It's fun. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have a little additional information we want to add to the recording, and this will just be on the audio recorder. It's not going to be on the video recorder. But one more thing that I would like to find out from you, Mr. and Mrs. Shafer, is the reason that you decided to come to Oklahoma State University. Peggy?
Yes, all my family had gone to the University of Oklahoma, and that's where I thought I was headed. There was no doubt. But I made a visit up here with my band. I was a band member, and I fell in love with Theta Pond, and that's probably not a very good reason to choose your university, but it just felt right. The campus just felt right. So that really was what made up my mind. And you chose
I
it.
didn't see that apply, but I remember getting a chance to play basketball at Oklahoma A&M was a lifetime dream. Because I remember seeing Mr. Ivan in oatmeal ads and things, and comic books and stuff, and it was just, gosh, you couldn't ask for anything more than that. So I was just happy to come here and get that chance.